Did you know that there are over 250,000 unsolved murders in the U.S.?
Wow.
That's 250,000 families left
Mm.
wondering, searching for answers
Right.
that may never come.
It's a staggering number.
Today, we're taking a deep dive into one of those cases, a story that starts in an apartment in Hartford, Connecticut, back in 1996.
Okay.
And what makes this case so compelling is that it really highlights the human cost of these unsolved crimes.
Yeah,
It's not just about statistics, it's about real people
it is.
whose lives are forever altered by violence and loss.
Absolutely. And the story we're diving into today
Yeah.
is about Diana Ferris, a 34-year-old woman
Right.
who was tragically murdered just weeks before she was due to give birth to her fourth child.
Imagine the heartbreak,
Yeah.
the unanswered questions that have haunted her family for decades.
Absolutely.
We've got police reports, witness testimonies, even a chilling letter from prison,
Oh.
all painting a picture of a complex case with twists and turns that'll keep you on the edge of your seat.
Interesting. And what makes this case particularly fascinating is
Yeah.
this recent discovery of DNA evidence
Right.
that has reignited the investigation, offering a glimmer of hope for Diana's family and potentially bringing them closer to the truth.
So let's go back to April 1996. The scene is Diana's apartment. It's her brother's girlfriend, Claudia Rice,
Okay.
who makes this horrifying discovery.
Mm.
Diana's lying on her bed, covered in blood, a phone cord wrapped tightly around her neck. It's a brutal scene, and the immediate question is, who could have done this?
Right. Right from the start, the investigators face a number of challenges.
Yeah.
There were no signs of forced entry, which suggested that Diana might have known her attacker. The apartment itself was mostly tidy except for the bedroom, indicating that the struggle was confined to that space.
Okay.
It really paints a picture of a crime of passion or a personal vendetta.
So the police initially focused their investigation on a man named Cecil. He was a friend of both Diana and her boyfriend, Pookie, who was in jail at the time. Now, here's where things get interesting.
Okay.
Cecil admitted to having a relationship with Diana while Pookie was behind bars.
Well, it's not unusual for investigators to focus on those closest to the victim, especially in a case like this.
Right.
Someone who admits to being involved with them romantically.
Right.
It's a natural starting point, but it's important to remember that suspicion doesn't equal guilt.
Absolutely. And to complicate matters further, a television was missing from Diana's apartment.
Oh.
This led to the theory of a robbery gone wrong.
Okay.
The police followed several leads, but the missing TV was never recovered, and that line of investigation just kind of fizzled out.
It's a common thread in these cases. You often have multiple theories swirling around, and it's up to the investigators to piece together the puzzle, separate fact from fiction.
Another avenue the police explored was a potential connection to an earlier unsolved murder. 3 years before Diana's death, a man named Thomas Myers was killed. And there were whispers that Diana might have witnessed something that could have put somebody away for a long time.
Right. If that were true, that would provide a strong motive for silencing her permanently. It's a chilling thought, but the police, at least initially, didn't find any concrete evidence to support this theory.
There were also rumors circulating that Diana was involved in prostitution and used drugs. Some witnesses even placed her in a pickup truck shortly before her death.
Those rumors, whether they're true or not, often add another layer of complexity to these investigations.
Absolutely.
They can lead to biases and assumptions that might cloud the judgment of those involved in the case.
And in this case, the police actually managed to track down the driver of that pickup truck.
Okay.
But he was ultimately cleared of any involvement in Diana's death.
Yeah.
So you have this complex web of relationships, potential motives, and conflicting information. It's no wonder the investigation stalled.
Yeah.
Leaving Diana's family in a state of agonizing limbo.
It's a sadly familiar scenario in many cold cases. Leads run dry, witnesses disappear, and the trail goes cold, leaving families to grapple with unanswered questions and the weight of unresolved grief. But as you mentioned earlier, this case takes a surprising turn a few months after Diana's death, with the arrival of a letter in a police station, a letter that would introduce a whole new set of players and potential motives.
And that letter would come from a most unexpected source.
Okay.
A man sitting in prison, claiming to have information that could blow the case wide open. But we'll delve into the contents of that letter and what happened next after a quick word from our sponsors.
Make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next part of this gripping story.
So we're left with this case that seems to be at a standstill,
Right.
with Diana's family desperately seeking answers. And it's a situation that sadly plays out all too often,
Yeah.
leaving loved ones in this state of perpetual uncertainty. But sometimes,
Right.
a single piece of information,
Yeah.
even one delivered from a seemingly unlikely source,
Wow.
can shift the entire trajectory of an investigation.
And that's exactly what happens in Diana's case.
Okay.
This letter that lands on the detective's desk
Yeah.
comes from an inmate named Mark, who's serving time in prison.
Okay.
Now, what's interesting is that Mark claims to have overheard two men, Jimmy and Matthew, bragging about forcing Diana into prostitution,
Oh, wow.
robbing her, and possibly even killing her.
This type of information
Yeah.
from a jailhouse informant
Right.
can be tricky.
Yeah.
It's crucial to corroborate those claims with other evidence.
Right.
Sometimes informants have their own motives,
Yeah, I see.
seeking leniency in their own cases or settling personal scores.
Absolutely. But here's where it gets even more intriguing.
Okay.
Mark's letter is incredibly detailed. He describes overhearing conversations, witnessing drug use,
Yeah.
and even recounts Jimmy allegedly trying to establish an alibi by claiming to be renting a room at Diana's apartment.
Those specific details.
If they're proven accurate,
Right.
can be incredibly valuable to an investigation. They add this layer of credibility to the
Yeah.
informant's claims
Yeah.
and could potentially lead to new lines of inquiry.
But for reasons that remain unclear, the police didn't seem to follow up on Mark's tip at the time. It's one of those baffling aspects of
Yeah.
cold cases that leave you shaking your head,
Right.
wondering how crucial information could be overlooked.
Well, it's impossible to know for certain
Yeah.
why some leads are pursued more aggressively than others.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a matter of limited resources.
Uh-huh.
Other times, certain pieces of information may seem more credible at the time. It's a frustrating reality for those seeking justice,
Right.
but it underscores the importance of revisiting cold cases
Yeah.
with fresh eyes and new technologies, and that's
Yeah.
exactly what happens in Diana's case.
Fast forward 15 years to 2011, and Detective Jacobson with the cold case unit decides to take a fresh look at Diana's case. He recognizes the potential of DNA testing,
Yeah.
a technology that wasn't readily available back in 1996,
Right.
to uncover new leads.
Well, the advent of DNA technology has revolutionized the way we investigate cold cases.
Yeah.
It's provided a powerful tool
Right.
for revisiting old evidence
Right.
and potentially identifying individuals connected to the crime.
Detective Jacobson's first focus was that bloody fingerprint smudge found at the crime scene.
Okay.
It seemed like a golden opportunity
Yeah.
to finally get a definitive answer. But as we know, things don't always go according to plan.
Well, forensic science is constantly evolving,
Yeah.
but sometimes the way evidence is stored
Right.
can impact the viability of DNA extraction.
Yeah.
It's a delicate process, and even the smallest misstep will lead to devastating setbacks.
And sadly, in this case, the way that bloody fingerprint was stored had degraded the DNA
Oh.
to the point where it was no longer usable. It was a huge disappointment,
Yeah.
especially for Diana's family,
Of course.
who were so close to potentially getting some answers.
It's a stark reminder of the fragility of evidence.
Right.
And the importance of proper preservation techniques. But thankfully, Detective Jacobson didn't give up.
He then turned his attention to the bedspread Diana was found on,
Okay.
sending it off for DNA testing, hoping for a different outcome. And after what must have felt like an eternity,
Yeah.
the results came back, revealing the presence of semen from two different men.
Now, this is where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
The DNA profiles from the bedspread were run through CODIS, the National DNA Database,
Okay.
and they got hits, matches,
Wow.
with two individuals. One was Cecil, who admitted to sleeping with Diana, and the other was Jimmy,
Wow.
one of the men named in Mark's letter from prison.
It seems like the pieces of the puzzle are finally falling into place. You
Yeah.
have a witness statement and now DNA evidence
Right.
linking two individuals to the crime scene. Could this be the break in the case that everyone had been waiting for?
Well, not so fast.
Okay.
While the DNA evidence is certainly compelling, it's important to remember that it doesn't automatically equal guilt.
Right.
Remember, Cecil had already admitted to being intimate with Diana,
Right.
so his DNA on the bedspread isn't necessarily incriminating.
I see.
And as for Jimmy, well, he denies any involvement despite the DNA match.
So Detective Jacobson sets out to confront Jimmy, who's currently serving time in a federal prison
Okay.
on drug charges. He travels to New York
Okay.
to interview him,
Uh-huh.
hoping to get some answers, but the interview doesn't exactly go as planned.
This is where the human element of investigations comes into play.
Right.
Sometimes even with solid evidence, individuals maintain their innocence,
Right.
making it even more challenging to determine the truth.
During the interview, Jimmy becomes enraged,
Ooh.
denying that he even knew Diana well, let alone had any physical contact with her.
This raises a crucial question. If Jimmy is truly innocent,
Yeah.
how did his DNA end up on the bedspread?
Exactly.
Could there be an explanation we haven't considered yet?
Right.
Or is he desperately trying to cover his tracks?
And to complicate things further, there's another piece of evidence
Yeah.
that could hold the key to solving this case.
Okay.
The phone cord used to strangle Diana.
Right.
However, Detective Jacobson reveals that the DNA on the cord has degraded over time
Okay.
and needs a specific type of advanced testing to be extracted.
Hmm.
The search for the right testing facility is ongoing,
Right.
leaving the case in a state of suspenseful limbo.
This highlights the constant battle between the limitations of science
Right?
and this relentless pursuit of justice.
Absolutely.
It's a race against time,
Yeah.
hoping that technology can catch up to the demands of these complex investigations. But while the search for that definitive DNA evidence continues,
Right.
there's another aspect of this story
Yeah.
that we need to explore, one that focuses on the human impact of this tragedy.
Diana's children, robbed of their mother at such young ages, are now adults,
Yeah.
each navigating their own journeys of healing and resilience. We'll delve into their stories and the profound impact this unsolved case has had on their lives after a short break. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the conclusion of this deeply moving story. It's incredible to think about the ripple effect of a crime like this. Diana's murder didn't just end her life, it cast a long shadow over the lives of her children,
Right.
who were left to grapple with this trauma and uncertainty of her unsolved case.
It's important to remember that behind every cold case statistic, there are real people whose lives have been irrevocably changed. The emotional toll of an unsolved murder on the victim's family is immeasurable. They're left with a void that can never truly be filled, and often, this burning desire for answers and closure.
Diana's oldest daughter, Miranda, shared her story with us. And it's both heartbreaking and inspiring. She spoke up at the last conversation she had with her mother, the memories she cherishes, and the determination to make her mother proud.
It's a testament to the human spirit's ability to find strength and resilience even in the face of unimaginable tragedy.
Yeah.
Miranda's story and the stories of Diana's other children serve as this reminder that life does go on, and that even in the darkest of times, hope can endure.
But hope doesn't erase the pain or diminish the need for justice.
Right.
So where does that leave us with Diana's case?
Well, Detective Jacobson is still diligently working to obtain that advanced DNA testing for the phone cord. It's a long shot, but if they can extract a viable DNA profile, it could be the key to finally linking Jimmy or Matthew definitively to the murder.
So we're left with a bit of a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
We have compelling evidence, but not that irrefutable smoking gun. It makes you wonder if there's more to the story than meets the eye.
That's the nature of cold cases. They're intricate puzzles with missing pieces.
Right.
And sometimes it takes years, even decades,
Yeah.
to uncover those crucial bits of information that bring the full picture into focus. But as we've seen in Diana's case, breakthroughs can happen even after all this time.
It really underscores the importance of never giving up on these cases, both for the sake of the victims and for the families who deserve closure.
Exactly. And as we wrap up our deep dive into Diana Ferris's case, it's important to remember that this isn't just a story.
Right.
It's a real-life tragedy with real-life consequences.
If anyone out there has any information, no matter how small or insignificant it may seem, we urge you to come forward. You can contact the Connecticut Cold Case Tip Line at 1-866-623-8058 or email tips to cold.case@ct.gov.
Sometimes that one missing piece of information can be the catalyst for solving a case and bringing peace to those who have been waiting for justice. Diana's case reminds us that unsolved crimes are not just statistics. They represent lives cut short and families left behind with this profound sense of loss and unanswered questions. By sharing these stories, we hope to keep the memory of the victims alive and to inspire hope that one day justice will prevail. And if you've been captivated by this deep dive into Diana's story and want to explore more fascinating cases and mysteries, be sure to subscribe to the deep dive so you don't miss future episodes. We'll We'll continue to bring you in-depth explorations of compelling cases and the tireless efforts of those dedicated to solving them. Until next time, keep those minds curious and those questions coming.